Good afternoon, friends. So this is our first session for essay writing classes. Needless to say, you all know very well that these days essay is playing very crucial role in selection because of the kind of marks and the variation of marks candidates are getting. Few candidates are getting 70, 60. At the same time, few candidates are there, those who are getting 140, 150, 160. But the question arises, why such a huge gap? Such a huge gap. And then ideally, I think that if you are consistent in this paper, then 130, 140 is not a very big task. Yes, certainly you will have to push very hard yourself for 150, 160, 165. But then 130, 134, 40, it's easy, it's not tough. Providing you are consistent. Why I am saying all this? You need to be consistent, because usually we'll see that whatever strategy we adopt for paper 1, 2, 3, 4 optional, whatever we are doing, largely it is the whole our strategy is based on our perception. How do we see this examination? How do we see paper 1? How do we see economy? How do we see essay? Is something, though it is very important in terms of the marks, 250 marks, but usually we see it in a very easy mode, easy going, and sometimes we think that okay, fine, after preliminary examination we can do it. But believe me, this is one paper where 130, 140, 150, 160, 165 is possible only when you are consistent. Because after preliminary examination, what I witnessed, the pressure is so high on candidates, time is so less, that even if you know that the gray areas are there and you have to work, time is very less. Anxiety is very high. In 3 months, paper 1, 2, 3, 4 optional, and so many things we have to do. So usually it's this, because of the situation, it doesn't allow you to perform well. Not always, but sometimes. Yes, I do remember one candidate was there who got selected. So 2013-14, he scored 39 and 50 marks, though passed out from a very good college in essay. And paper 1, 2, 3, 4 was very good, decent marks. And 2015, he scored 145, 144, such a huge jump. See, and he got 161 rank, Asghar Ali. So it's possible in the sense, and that is possible only when you are consistent. Because what happens, that in essay, often when you see, sometime when broadly if we categorize nature of questions, then you will see that either we categorize question in one bracket which is close-ended, one category is there, for the sake of convenience we call it open-ended. Close-ended is one where direction is fixed, you know that in which direction you have to go, and it is more or less, it is signposted, whether it is related to tourism, whether it is related to jobless growth was this year, whether it is related to Olympic, or so many things. So you know, okay, fine, this is the area where you have to go. But then there are topics which is open-ended, in the sense your interpretation, and that is subject to interpretation. How do you see? How far you see? How you see apparently? Whether you are able to see the underlying meaning also, and then you actually set the scope, and then you are able to see how far you can see, and then you pick, okay, fine, to explain, to write, you are in a position to pick 4, 5, 6, 7 dimensions. Fine. As far as you people are concerned, generally you people are very comfortable as far as close-ended topics are concerned, because since it helps, or you can get input, a lot of input from paper 1, 2, 3, 4. For example, if I say that jobless growth, which was last year, or you can say the cyber security, there are so many things. So already you are in the process of content procurement, and that you have already studied so many things while preparing for general studies. But believe me, it is not sufficient criteria. It may be essential criteria, but for writing essay, it's not sufficient criteria, because essay you cannot write just merely on the basis of the fact, figures, etc. Its role is very limited, very limited, very limited. In any case, perspective, ability to examine, ability to see ideas, ability to illustrate, these are very important. So when we say essay, essentially essay, when we say 3 parts, introduction, body, conclusion, easily we can say, when we say introduction, simply means unwrap it. Introduction is simply, when we say introduction, guess what? Means what is this topic is all about? What is this topic is all about? Whether you agree, disagree, you have ample space and time to write in the body, explain it. But as far as this is concerned, introduction, just unwrap it. While unwrapping, you can use anecdotes, stories, events, news, quotes. Few candidates are very comfortable in quotes, few candidates are not at all comfortable in quotes. Depends, but don't worry for that. It's not like that those who are using quotes will get the good marks, not necessarily. Not necessarily. So once you unfold the topic, then the second part of this, what we call body, is simply whatever you are able to see in the topic, just prove it. You have to prove it. Yes, I am able to see correctly, clearly, precisely, and to prove it, you have dimensions. For example, but here I would like to say one thing, which I witnessed during last main examination, that often to explain, you try to develop a method, a rule sort of thing, that for every essay, let's say, try to pick 4 or 5 dimensions, social dimension, economic dimension, political dimensions, not necessarily. It will not help you out. If the inference is same, then it will not help. For example, if I say that all achievement starts with a desire, all achievement starts with a desire. Now if you say that if society wants to achieve something, there must be a sense of desire, element of desire in community member. If politician wants to achieve something, there must be desire. An economy, then what I'm trying to do is that actually I'm trying to say, convey, explain the same thing. The inference will remain same, inferences are same, but what I'm doing, I'm just changing the context. So ultimately you are saying the same thing. There is nothing new in your you can say explanation. There is nothing new. So when it comes to the dimensions, you need to be very careful that you are going to take, you are going to consider points which will take, or which will you can say see the topic differently from the different aspects. For example, let's say I say desire is very important. Needless to say, it is a start point. You dream, you have desire, but the next point is that desire without intention cannot take you anywhere. Intention is also very important Because through the intention, desire sets your objective, okay, whether you are moving in the right direction or not. Whether you are moving in the east, west, north, south. So intention will tell you that your desire is now able to see or go towards east or west. Fine, intention is very, very important. So the correlation between desire and intention. The third point comes that desire is important to achieve, but what you want to achieve, that is also very important. In the sense, goal setting, where you want to reach. And then the next point comes that ultimately desire is important, achievement is also there, but how to connect the bridge, how to bridge the gap. Everyone, you can say, there are thousands and millions of people who wants to be cricketer like Sachin Tendulkar, but its desire will not help you. To become a Sachin Tendulkar, you need to have endurance, एबिलिटी, स्किल्स, पेशेंस. तो किसी भी चीज को अचीव करने के लिए वो डिजायर के बीच और अचीवमेंट का गैप तो फिल करेगा ना. नाउ सो दिस इज हाउ एक्चुअली व्हेन यू वांट टू से, देन यू हैव टू पॉइंट नंबर 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5. Now, so every dimensions that you are going to pick have certain structure. Fine. So every dimension is complete only when you start with main idea. Fine. Suppose if you want to consider, or if you are considering 5 dimensions at all, so start with the main idea. Then whatever main idea is there to explain it. When you explain it, I again ask you, can you prove it? In the sense, illustrate. And mind it always, illustration, I also discussed before, illustration is complete until unless you explain or briefly you finally make a comment on its inference. Until unless you start talking about the inference, this illustration doesn't make much sense. It is relevant, it may be relevant, but it's not complete. I'm coming with the example. So, guess what? Prove it, and then once you prove it, then I again ask you, are you sure? Reconfirm. So once you reconfirm it, it becomes your conclusion. But reconfirming does not mean you are writing the same thing. It has to be brief, summary. Then eventually you see that is there any scope for the suggestion? How do we see the topic, the issue, the idea with a futuristic perspective? So it cannot be. So essay is not a long note on something or anything, number one. So first of all, we need to understand what is not, you can say, essay, or what are the things that actually spoils the scope of a good essay. Essay is not a long note on anything. Essay cannot be brief note on anything. Then essay is not a compilation of big ideas. Essay is not compilation of big ideas of the big people. Essay is simply author's own argument. It has to be original. It has to come from you. It's your argument. And to make your argument, few things you need to make it very, very clear that your essay should be, number one, content should be relevant. Then it has to be signposted, in the sense direction should be there, where you want to take the examiner. Then third, it must Sustain in the sense that at no point of time, examiner should feel that now the content or content means with essays, your write-up is dragging somewhere. It has to be fresh all the time, every dimension, every dimension. Often it might be after 500, 600 words, you may not have much to write. But then you have to write some 800, 900, 1000 words. So it's possible. And then at last, when you reach to here, a sense of completeness must be there. It should give a complete view. But then when I say so, all this, everything will start with a very, very good rough work. If your rough work is good, your almost half work is done. If your rough work is good, your half work is done. So once you go for rough work, simply start throwing as many questions as possible to the topic. You try to see the scope of the topic first. For example, if I say that character determines destiny, I repeat, if I say character determines destiny, now it's open-ended, but the thing is that how far you are able to see sometimes. So usually what happens, we read apparent meaning, which is loose alphabets, okay, fine. To start with, it's okay, but then you have to go a little bit deep also. So you first start raising the question, okay, fine, character determines destiny. Number one, what is character? Number two, why character determines destiny? Number three, is it that character determines destiny? Number four, is it that always character determines destiny? Number five, is it which type of character determines destiny? Positive character determines destiny. What is positive character? Do we have any example? Is it not true that negative character also gets their destiny these days very easily? Fine. So then then the negative character used to get their destiny easily, then why to be positive, man of positive character? Fine. So at least for the first few minutes, at least apparently an underlying meaning you have to assess. And then actually your rough work starts, proper rough work. Okay, fine. I'm able to see this topic. I'm able to feel the topic, correctly assess the topic, and then you pick point number one, point number two, point number three, introduction, what you have to write, body. These are the 4 or 5 points you have to explain, examine, substantiate, and then further the conclusion. So this is basically a broader idea. So today we will start with Ivanshu sir is there, and then usually we used to take both. We will start today with rough work, because if your rough work is good, again I say, your 50% job is done. You attempt rough work, you don't have to submit your copy today. You just compare. We have also done our rough work, how to go for it. Then from the next test, we will have class first, then test, then discussion, followed by discussion. Strictly copy correction has to be either by me or sir. Strictly, there is no second thought of it. And then we'll go for one-to-one. After copy correction, we can go for one-to-one. So this is how we are going to start. We'll give you at least 100 topics workbook to practice the thing for your self-study that you can do. We have already designed the topic in such a you can say of such a diverse nature that it includes political also, science also, economy also, open-ended also. So we'll try to cover it all. And so this is what for the first session. I don't want to speak much because Now we'll proceed gradually. Now I invite Himanshu sir. He will share, because together we used to evaluate the copies. He will share his own experience. What are the common mistakes? How to avoid it? Very briefly. Being the first session, I don't want to make it lousy. And then we'll take up questions. Whatever question, you just write down your questions. Whatever query you have, we'll address it properly. Don't worry for that. And then we'll start the test. Thank you, sir. Please.
Once again, very good afternoon. I was wondering, when this paper was introduced in UPSC, you are very rigorously tested in many areas of general studies, and instead of 2 optionals, at least in 1 optional you are still being tested. And written examination might have been sufficient by testing your general studies and optional papers. First of all, it requires that we must appreciate what does actually this paper essay tests. Does it test your communication abilities? Yes. Does it test your thinking and analytical abilities? Yes. Does it test your information and factual soundness? Partially, yes. Not totally. What after that? It tests your attitude. It tests your psychology. It tests your character. It tests how do you handle a very new subject thrown up to you. Those abilities which are hidden abilities, they can never be tested by testing you in general studies. That in the same circumstances, there are people who commit suicide, and there are people who bounce back. There are people who just leave themselves as destiny drives them. They are driven. Why these 3 kinds of reactions? And people are not ignorant. The people who are quitting their lives because the situation has saturated and crisis has saturated. They can be national head of Britannia. They can be daughter of Onassis. They can be anybody. They can be Whitney Houston, the greatest success in the world of music. Elton John is the largest album-selling English singers. Among English singers, he is the largest album seller. And second is Whitney Houston. Taken male, females together. At 42, before Grammys, in 2012, you must remember that the evening was fatal evening when she took some overdose of medicines and she died. She was considered to be an icon of success. So the point that essay is going to test is not simply your communication abilities, your factual soundness, your capabilities to think. It is testing your attitude, it is testing your character, it is testing how deftly and how efficiently you can handle a situation which is new, which is not ever seen by you. Because every time you have this paper in your examination, the topics are usually unseen. They seem to be tangentially connected to the amount of information which we have, the amount of information which we have gathered for paper 1, 2, 3, 4. Those facts and figures usually seem to be the starting point for us while deciding which topic we are going to decide to write as an essay. This might be a good idea, but alone it is not a good idea. It requires that your facts and figures should be sound, but your essay can never be sound because of that. So in the first instance, I want to make it clear that never be afraid of thinking. Essay is basically an art of thinking, and how do you proceed? How do you get your leads to think? It is extremely important to know. Essay is basically thinking within a perimeter, because you have given a context or a perspective. The title basically pertains to some context. The title has certain perspectives. And once you understand that context and perspective, it is very easy for you to find out the leads on which you want to build up. Because without leads, and mostly students coming from engineering and medical background, they usually say that it's very difficult. We have already lost so far humanities and social sciences students are concerned, they have been trained in many of the aspects which appear as titles of essay. They feel more comfortable, and that's why the way we have thought objective thinking and especially thinking in terms of formulae and thinking in terms of machines, we usually do not reach various dimensions. You do not reach because you never try to contextualize. Any statement has a context. Any statement has a perspective. And thinking is not open. In essay, you have to think within a given circumference. You have to think within that, and within that you can drive your wagon anywhere you want, because it is your write-up. It is not borrowed ideas. I will not be shy of borrowing ideas when I am writing. And even Newton said that whatever I have seen from the shoulders of others. Whatever I have seen from the shoulders of others simply means that any thinking cannot be begin out of the blue. You must have some gold standards. You must have some guiding principles, some guiding ideas, some virtues, some attributes, some things which are extremely agreeable and some things which are never agreeable. You have certain gold standards on which you judge whether the topic which has been given should be supported, or we must go against it, or we must take a middle path. These are the decisions which have to be made ab initio. I am happy that Mr. Director has talked about the structural aspects, and he has also talked about some of the essentials of writing a good essay. How do you begin and how do you steer it? How do you sustain your argument? How do you create introduction and body, description and conclusion? He has thrown some brief ideas on that. Maybe we require another class when we proceed forward to discuss all those things separately, that how do we construct an introduction and how do you construct a description, how do we construct a conclusion. But before that, this is an idea which will probably be found in this class only, because people are not talking about how to construct an essay with the help of thinking. And when you are thinking, it is not simply floating in the world of ideas, because that floating is not allowed. You have to be within the periphery, within the circumference, the title which sets your contours. So you start thinking from a perspective, from a context, and when you think, then what is called thinking? You try to find the meaning in the title. There could be meaning which is very apparent. You have words, you have group of words, and there is an apparent meaning which comes very clearly from that. But mostly the philosophical essays, the essays with philosophic orientation, which Mr. Director said open-ended essays normally, those essays usually have more underlining than apparent. So therein lies your real research or your real thinking. You can be equal to all others, or you can be equal to the median class of competitors, your own competitors. You can be equal to them, average students, but the moment you have some understanding of the underlying, you are going to create edge. Maybe sometimes edge can be created also by your communication style, but before communication style, identification of dimensions, though it requires to understand the context and perspective. Secondly, it requires to understand the meaning of the apparent and the meaning of the underlying. Once you understand, in introduction what you do is that you write the way you take that meaning, that perspective and that context. And why do you take that? Some indication of that. And where do you lead your write-up? Unwrapping, Mr. Director said, this is unwrapping. When you do all those things, your introduction is complete. I have seen some of the students arguing initially with me, coming from other classes, still not fetching good marks. They said that, our teacher said that always start from historical background. Historical background is a good introduction. Do you think that for all essays, giving an historical background is a good introduction? That does not serve the purpose. Introduction familiarizes the reader with the topic, its context, its perspective, its apparent meaning, its underlying meaning, and your understanding about that. And with that understanding, what do you want to say? These indications are unwrapping. If you do that, your introduction is complete. And after doing your introduction, when you proceed forward, leads become difficult because you do not do proper introduction. Introduction is basically your full essay. People say that we are losing time in trying to form introduction. So some people become very fast. They just start with an anecdote or start with historical background or start any information which they have, anything bringing into your write-up because it seems to have some tangential connection with the title is not a good introduction. Introduction has to be placed in the context, has to be placed with the perspective, has to be clarified in meaning both apparent and underlying. And how do you perceive, whether you agree, disagree, and where do you want to take? I will give one or two examples also, I will not take too much time. The second part, when we talk about description, what description ideally I see while students write their answers? Again, somewhere there is a fallacy in the mind that after talking about facts, from one paragraph to another paragraph, we are giving a good description. Well, Mr. Director said that you have to explore different dimensions. That it's not simply categorization into social, political, or economic, or national, or international. That this classification does not mean that you have explored different dimensions. It may be possible that in all these areas, you are exploring the same dimension. That you are not saying anything which is different, anything which is a different dimension of the same topic. Say, for example, I say that achieving life is not avoiding death. I mean, that is a very simple topic. Apparently, achieving life is not avoiding death. I have started with a little bit of subjective topic. What exactly is achieving life? How to describe this kind of topic, description part? Before you reach description, you have to know that what is life and what means achievement in life, and what is death, and to what extent we are fighting every moment against death. In fact, our Darwinian instincts, survival instinct, is the basic to the growth of human civilization as well as all living organisms. That survival instinct is extremely important. Why not? Avoiding death is life. That we escape. In that food chain, if you see the race on Discovery or Animal Planet, how animals are running away and how they are being chased by the powerful animals. I mean, that survival instinct, directly or indirectly, we have several assaults. That nature was made quite friendly for us on earth. But there are many things, even in this nature which is very friendly, that we have to get food, we have to get shelter, we have to be free from external attacks. Initially it was wild in which we were living and we were having fire. So of course, avoiding death is a part of life. Until and unless you are able to assert your survival instinct, you do not live. But yes, this is an animal instinct, and survival instinct is just the bare minimum of life. Because when we think about human life, it is about so many more things. It is about loving, it is about giving, it is about being optimistic, it is about enduring, it is about so many good, nice ideas which culturally the human society has developed over the period of history. So achieving life, when we define it, is not a big car, it is not only big house, it is not only power and wealth, it goes much beyond. Apart from survival instinct, which is extremely important, or wealth and power, that wherewithal, it does not mean that you have achieved life. You have to be happy, you have to be optimistic, you have to be giving, you have to be loving. All those things make the achievement of life, because achievements have a tendency to give fulfillment and satisfaction. You see, whatever you have, you will always feel empty if you are not loving, if you are not giving, if you are not happy. So all those things are, see, I have seen so many dimensions. So when I am going to describe, then I will not have to create an artificial class for one paragraph, for second paragraph. We have different ideas. How optimism or endurance also are part of achieving life. How being happy is a part of achieving life. From paragraph to paragraph, in one paragraph, in description, you have homogeneous ideas. Paragraphing is a better way. Sometimes people will prefer to have subtitles in description. I don't have any hard and fast rule whether you write subtitles in your description or not. it doesn't matter. If you write, it's fine. If you do not write, it is much better in my perspective. Some of the teachers highlight so that you remain close to the title. You have subtitles which you always associate with the title, and you find that if there is a nuptial cord or if there is a connection between what you call your paragraphs and your title. So subtitles may help you, but then this is more of an example of your being able to contain connection with the title without giving subtitles. Paragraphs are sufficient. You create 1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, 3 paragraph. Normally 6 to 7 paragraph is considered to be ideal, because you have to write 1000 words or 1200 words. Depending upon your speed, 1000 is sufficient, but you can write 1200 words also, given the 2 essays to be balanced and to have some time for thinking and articulation. This is sufficient. So paragraphing, introduction cannot be less than 10% of your total write-up, as I believe, because it's not possible. Conclusion cannot be less than 10%, that is the minimum. I think the upper limit could be fixed on 15 and 15, depending upon the title of the essay. It depends how much you take time for introduction and how much, but not more than 30% introduction and conclusion taken together. So 70% normally is basically an arbitrary idea, but still I will insist that your total write-up must have 70% in your description. Now, Mr. Director said some things which I thought I should elaborate. I am not going to repeat that, but he said that you are writing your paragraphs and you are supposing that you are writing about a dimension which is connecting to the central theme. No paragraph is complete until and unless your paragraph says something. And for saying something, just a statement of the facts or provisions of the Constitution or provisions of the human rights laws will not be sufficient. Where do you want to take that argument? That is just a support. That you are giving a fact or a prop. Using a prop is not dancing. In description, therefore, there are some things which are sought by the examiners and you must fulfill that. Something which is sought by the examiner in description is relevance and focus. Whatever you are telling, is it relevant to the title? Are you focused to the requirement of the title? Or you are diverging? Divergence is not a crime. Depending upon your capability of communication and connection, when you are diverting, you are bringing something or calling something from outside in your discussion, and you are making it relevant by creating a connecting bridge. That can you do. But the first thing which is very important, that while exploring different dimensions, you create paragraphs in your description. Those dimensions must be connected with the title. Fine. And when they are connected with the title, does not mean that you do not take divergence, but if you take divergence, you should try to create a connecting bridge. And after that, what you do is that every paragraph must infer something which is a statement on the title. Your agreement, your disagreement, or you are going to take some kind of argument which is relevant to the title, but it must be referred very clearly, because opening a paragraph is fine, every paragraph must be closed. That when you write a paragraph, when you open it, it must be closed by an inference. Or you can start with the inference and it must be proved by your arguments in the paragraph. So that is the way you write a paragraph. Simply a statement of the truth, a statement of the facts is not essay. That is what we call analysis. That you are examining a thing, supporting with the fact or arguments, and then you are inferring that yes, that is why this is so, or that is why this is not so. This has to be stated in every paragraph. When you go to conclusion, usually I see that most of the new students are prompted, probably because of shortage of time or because of the hard work which they have given in writing the previous parts, your introduction and description. You are in a haste and you write an abrupt conclusion. 2-liners, 3-liners, 5-liners. That is not conclusion. A conclusion should have a length between 10 and 15%. 10 and 15%. That is again an arbitrary criteria, but I believe, and I have read many essay writers of the classical genre, many essay writers of the modern genre. You also must have read from modern genre. Some of the students coming from literature and language might have read from the classical genre, Bacon or Emerson or Bertrand Russell. They were the great essay writers of their time. Today you read Arunti Ray, or for that much example Ramchandra Guha. They are also writing good essays on various current burning topics. There are many who are writing, and I will simply say that there are certain precautions. You cannot have the liberty which Arunti Ray as an activist, journalist and author has. That in civil services you don't have the possibility of taking the side like an activist takes. You have to be a rationalist. After all, you have to be neutral in political leanings. That you have to see anything through an educated way, through an educated style. So that is something which is, but in conclusion what you do is that you sum up your arguments and inferences very briefly. Language need not be the same. It should not be a cut and paste job, but you try to give a summary. Like when I am talking about Tare Zameen Par and somebody is asking me that how was the film, and I just want to give a conclusion which is very relevant for the next watcher. So I talk about that it was about robotics in education. It is about the popular pressure of opting for the careers which are popular. Tare Zameen Par is a movie which wants students to give the freedom to choose the field where they can excel, the field which they like. I am just talking about this. And when you talk in description, you will be talking about the characters and how the characters have made certain points, what the role parents were doing, what the role teacher was doing, and what the role the student, concerned student on whom it was made. That is description part. So in conclusion, what you do is that you try to summarize your arguments and inferences first. Secondly, you state the conclusion, the stand which you find after the arguments, you write about that. And thirdly, which Mr. Director said, that you always know that any discussion which you have done, howsoever logically and analytically, is not the final word on anything. So is there any suggestion? There are essays where you need suggestions. Should politics in campus be banned? Should politics in campus be banned? I think most of young people will agree that it should not be banned. But then of course, the transformation of the campus politics during last 30 or 3 decades, 30 years or 3 decades, has been towards many negatives. And to discuss about those negatives does not mean that you recommend it to stop. But you will certainly talk about certain code of conduct, certain discipline, certain self-regulation. Maybe you are inclined to say that better than policing, self-regulation is the way, whether university does or students do, or code of conduct. So this conclusion you can give, or even you are being attracted towards one of the committees which recommended how students' election should take place. So you mentioned some of the things about that, and maybe you can be critical about that. So in conclusion, there are sometimes you need suggestion and sometimes you need to be futuristic. Futuristic means the conclusion maybe from your perspective is giving a stand or a stance, but that stance may not be final, and there may be other dimensions which you do not primarily make your primary argument, but others can make. You have a small comment on that futuristic view, that yes, these are the points which are still open for discussion, that kind of thing. So then your conclusion becomes complete. I have multiple examples. I have been doing essay paper for quite some time in this organization, and Mr. Director has been benevolent enough to convert a professor's son into an essay teacher who is basically trained into economics. And since I was son of a professor and aberrant child, I read many things which he said. I did not read more what he said. I read only 10% of that. But still I feel that lateral reading is extremely important. That is why I am here as an essay teacher, because never be shy of lateral reading. Lateral reading probably is not possible in 2-3 months, but you read your newspapers, at least you do one justice, that you read your editorial pages, the whole page, the arguments being made or unmade, you read about that. Maybe sometimes you take 2 newspapers, or you are netizens, so you can see many newspapers, and some of the interesting things you can pick and choose, and you can read. And also, if examination is far away, choose some of the books which are motivational or which are written by some people of great wisdom. Because while writing all these points, your point will not be taken until and unless it is supported by at least 3 or any of the 3 or all of the 3. That your essay must be supported by empirical support. That is, data not written in very absolute and lousy and a very big numbers. That should be in proportion, percentages, or giving an idea what you are telling. So empirical support is important if you can do. Even if you cannot do, doesn't matter. Real life observations can help. that all of us are mature students. It is not like Fitzi and Narayana doing courses for 12th standard and we are giving Guru mantras and short methods and long methods and alternative methods. What you can do many of the things. I am just suggesting that you can have your own reactions, what you see around happening in politics, in society, and you have your own reactions, your own way to look onto that. So sometimes your titles may be giving you an opportunity to prove something because your real life observation is very good. सुनने की मोहलत है तो आवाज है पत्थरों में. If you have time to listen, there is voice even in stones. You can see. और in other way, शौके दीदार है अगर तो पहले नजर पैदा कर. If you really want to see, first of all create an eye for that. So essay requires that eye, and that eye is lateral reading. That eye is observation. Last in that is established wisdom. Established wisdom is, we cannot say that we live in India, we do not know about Mahatma Gandhi or Vivekananda or Ramakrishna Paramhans or Shankaracharya. We know about them and we should know. If we do not know, then being educated means that we must be educated first of all by those people who have proven their credentials. So we have to know, even if it is not available in your language, Rabindranath Tagore, when you are writing about education, how can you be without Rabindranath Tagore? When you are writing about democracy, how can you write without democracy without mentioning Abraham Lincoln? Or Plato, or Socrates, or Aristotle, they have discussed, especially Aristotle and Plato. So some of the international established wisdom, Plato, Socrates, you are not going to read politics or the books written by them. Basically, your age is such a good age. We were running after libraries and it was not computerized and looking onto all shelves and with dust and handkerchief keeping on your nose. Today you just put Aristotle quotes. Brainy quotes will open. Think and Exist will open. Goodreads will open. These are websites. There are several websites. 20 websites in open in first page or more than that. Only one or two. The first one will suffice. You must know about established wisdom, about love, affection, democracy, socialism, communism. Because these are the things which are women's issues, women equality, empowerment, feminism, or maybe second sex written by Simone de Beauvoir. Those who are pursuing philosophy, they must be aware that she was a philosopher of the time of Jean-Paul Sartre. And during Sartre was offered Nobel Prize, but he declined to accept Nobel Prize. And she was a great competitor of Sartre while they were studying together. And that existentialist thinker, she is considered to be one of the great exponents of modern feminism. And the book Second Sex is available on internet. In Wikipedia it is available. It is a voluminous book and that book is really very good. I don't say that you go for lateral reading at the cost of your 1, 2, 3, 4 these papers or optional paper, but some of the things you should try to explore through these sites where quotable quotes have been given. You think on that, you agree or disagree, or you try to find meaning into that. So that is the brief introduction, what I can say about the way we teach essay here and the way we do it here. We will be very cooperative. Don't be bogged down by kind of experience or speed with which maybe a teacher is delivering in front of you. You are probably far more vigorous and energetic than me. I am just doing some limited areas. You are doing too many areas. So I believe that ultimately if I guide you with a torch, you will certainly go into the right direction. Performers are the players, not the coaches. Thank you.
Any question?